Hello and welcome back to OT the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time and how to spend it. My name is Andy Green.
I'm Felix Schultz. How you going, mate?
I'm fantastic, Felix. A little dark, a little glum, you might say.
Oh, yes, I hear what you're saying there. But first, we should probably chat about who we've got on this week.
Who do we have on, Felix?
We have Lorenz Brunner from IWC.
What does he do at IWC?
He does stuff with ceramic, I'm pretty sure. He does stuff with materials and probably chemicals and metals and alloys and things that I really don't understand.
Cool guy.
Yeah, no, really great chat. Again, IWC, thank you for sponsoring this episode. You can find out more about them at iwc.com or, Andy, and this is very much something that I would suggest doing, pop into your local IWC boutique. Get your hands on the Big Pilot 43. It is a watch that wears spectacularly well.
Yeah, or, pick up something in ceramic from IWC as well. Can't go wrong.
I mean, can we get ceramic IWC BP 43? Yes, they've got the Mojave. They've got a Mojave 43.
Sort of, I feel like you're lusting after that watch.
I do say Mojave more than I think I've ever said Mojave ever before when I'm talking about IWC. It's not a word that comes up too often in my daily language.
It suits you. You should get one.
Yeah. Maybe if we could also get them to do a slightly redder tone and call it the Gobi. Just do other deserts.
Just for you.
Yeah. Hey, you know what else we've been doing? Speaking about colours, speaking about materials, we took a little trip over to the dark side.
We did?
By which I mean Armadale.
Shudders, yeah.
To a very fancy butcher. This is a weird lead-in to what was really quite a lovely night and a special event for Tag Heuer, who have, as I'm sure everyone on the internet is aware, recently launched a pretty special Monaco special edition in time with the Monaco GP.
Mm-hmm.
The Dark Lord. It's
Dark Lord.
A new Dark Lord.
Finally.
Yeah.
It's into their archives.
So we helped Tag Heuer Australia, host this event, and we sort of hyped up the Dark Lord a bit. And we did, in doing the research, Andy, I think we were both quite surprised and, dare I say, shocked that this watch hasn't been made sooner.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they were waiting for the right time.
Yeah, and they had the Monza a little while ago, that black Monza that was a huge hit, but this time a Monaco that looks like one of, and I think that it's safe to say that the Dark Lord is one of like the top three most rare, most expensive, most hype vintage Heuer watches. Like there's not many of them. Like 5 have been auctioned in the last decade. They're super because of the Monaco's with an early PVD coating. The early PVD wasn't that great, so they're super hard to get in good condition. There's not much known about them, which just makes them cooler, to be honest. And I think that cool has translated into this new edition, which brings in, black ADLC titanium case, cool dial with that, the inner circle is concentric, sunburst polish. The outer bit is like really heavy grain, which is just striking. Andy, what do you think of this new watch?
Yeah, I mean, I saw one, the original one, maybe like 5 years ago in my travels, and I always it struck me it was just such a cool piece within their catalog. And look, Heuer has a ton of cool stuff that they've not even touched. The Tag Heuer's not even touched. So when I saw this was coming out, I was delighted. I think the finish on the case is really, really nice. The texture on the dial is nice. Rose gold has a nice sparkle to it. The price is right. Sort of 11 grand Aussie.
11,850.
11,850 Aussie. So sort of 12 Aussie, which doesn't go super far these days in that sort of category for something that's special and pretty limited production. I'm a fan.
Do you know what else I quite liked about it, Andy? So, of course, the Monaco OG was a caliber 11, which is that, you can tell it's got the winding crown on the other side. Yes. And this is a Heuer 02 caliber, so it's got 80 hours power reserve. I like it that it doesn't, that some purists might have gone, oh, why didn't you use a caliber 11 for this remake? Because that, tradition to the original. But the original didn't use a caliber 11.
No,
the Dark Lords used the Valjoux movement that had all the the crowns and pushers on the same side.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So check one out if you get the chance. You probably won't because they're gonna. Yeah, like you said, 25 in Australia. They'll be replenished with
Yeah,
time.
I think
But
this is got to be one of those hard. Like, it's not a limited edition; it's limited production, but it's got to be hard to get for a while. I think.
yeah, I think everyone's going to try and get their hands on this bad boy. One of the
And it
coolest
was
pictures I've seen this year.
Yeah, and it was cool. It was cool, doing a physical event again. It was cool, catching up with people we haven't seen and just, seeing some watches and talking to some watch people, which
Yeah,
it's
Anthony
exciting.
Doe did a nice write up of the evening, so I'm sure Felix, you can drop a link into that
Yep.
page from his website.
Yeah, had some pics. Look, us looking stylish and moody.
Speaking of watches, though, unusual watches. I saw I was having to be walking past Monaz the other day, and I saw a Blancpain X Fathoms.
Was it so subtle you missed it? You're like,
I
whoa, it's
nearly
clips
missed
under
it
the cuff.
at just 55.6 millimeters in diameter, 24 mils thick, zero lugs,
Wow.
zero lugs. So you save a bit of space there.
Yeah.
Just 300 meters water resistance, which is a bit off. 56,100 Australian dollars. So interesting, right? Interesting watch, and I think it was sold actually. I think someone walked in and bought it off the street. That's what I heard. They caught their eye and they just walked in and said, "Yep, I'll take that timepiece."
What struck you about this watch, Andy? Why are we talking about it? What makes it interesting?
So it's. I mean, have you seen it?
Mhm.
It's enormous. I mean, if
Mhm.
you're picturing the dimensions I just gave you, it's enormous. There's a lot of color: red,
Mhm.
red, yellow, blue, white. Really big black bezel. The case has a bunch of pushers and helium escape valves and all that sort of stuff. It's just chunky and it's just a beast of a watch, but it's sort of like a concept watch.
Yeah, it's from a time, I think, in watch design where they did some where dive watches and big watches were super, super
Mm.
cool. Um, and it's wacky. I can't see them making it today, but I'm kind of glad they did make it.
They still make it today. This is the new.
No.
Yeah,
Wow. Like,
this is
this is
not the.
when was this released?
This is like an updated one. It's because I've seen one previously a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and I said that, and they go, no, this is the current current model.
What a time to be alive, Andy.
Yeah, yeah. And from Blancpain, obviously, famous dive watch history, but
Uh-huh.
wacky, man, what a wacky watch. So yeah, if you're in Melbourne, go check out Monards. They might still have it on display, or it might have been picked up by
Mm.
that happy customer.
Yeah. I mean, we could have a little segment on wacky watches. We should do that. We should definitely talk about that because it
We
reminds me of
can.
one of my favorite wacky divers, the old Eternomatic.
All right, we'll
Uh,
save it for another chat. Let's not
yeah.
use up all our good content in one go.
No, no. I had a question for you. I had another hypothetical for you.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this the other day. Artem Straps, good
Mm-hmm.
friends of the pod. Artem.straps on Instagram, artemstraps.com on the internet. We talk about how they're sort of receptive to social media, and that
Yeah,
we're always sort of jokingly pitching them to make some sort of, I
Pink
don't know,
NATO. I don't know, guys.
some sort of ridiculous colored strap option. But as a serious thought exercise, what strap would you want them to make?
Okay, so NATO for me.
Okay.
I want. I look. First preference is like a nice pink, but I would be very happy with maybe like a forest green or like an olive green.
Yeah. Okay.
Just really sleek. I feel like that goes with a lot of dive watches.
Any details? Any hardware choices? Any sizes?
I think you would go. I mean, yeah, 20 mil, obviously, 20
Mm.
mils between the lugs. Probably like a brushed hardware. Keep it sleek and low key. What about you?
Two things. One that I think I'm a big fan of personally, and I use it in a lot of combinations, like that sort of sandy, khaki,
Oh,
dare I
yep.
say, Mojave color.
Mojave, yeah.
um, but then I was just thinking, I actually reckon they would get a lot of because commercial traction out of a different color. Because to be honest, pink, while you might love it, Andy, I might love it. It's not going to sell volumes.
No, I'd have to buy MOQ.
I reckon they would do surprisingly well with like an orange sailcloth.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
You know how like the some of the I can't remember the Patek Aquanauts come with an orange strap.
Yep.
Like you see that sort of statement orange come on, cool watches. I think that would work really well. And on a sailcloth, like maybe one of the Loop-Less, just something a bit sort of sleek and even because they sort of have that almost rubbery feel to them that I think would translate really well, like bright, high-vis orange, kind of like the orange on the Blancpain X Fathoms, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think we've just given them enough work to do for the next couple of
Yeah.
months.
So
The research and development team is going to be busy working out how to bring our 2 dream products to life.
that was a perfect segue to another research development team, Lorenz Brunner, head of research and innovation at IWC. We will talk to him now.
Let's do it. Today's guest is Lorenz Brunner, the head of research and innovation at IWC and a key figure in the brand's most technical achievements. For example, Ceratanium and, of course, the IWC Big Pilots Watch Shock Absorber XPL. Welcome to OT the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to talk to you today about our latest developments, material science, and everything else. Thank you.
We're very excited to have you on. And the first question I want to ask you is, as head of research and innovation at IWC, how do you stay creative and innovative?
Yeah, I mean, research and innovation is a small department of the R&D department, so research and development, and innovation is the part that focuses on long-term development. So I would say the projects that I'm leading, they are not yet linked to a fixed product. So we do basically basic research in terms of a company. That means, for example, when I started with the Ceratanium, there was no watch yet fixed that should use Ceratanium, because at that point it was not sure whether or not it will be a success. So it's kind of taking risks also for research projects, I would say.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And now, some people might not be aware that IWC has quite a pedigree when it comes to high-tech material and material innovation. Can you give us maybe in the next 2 minutes, an overview of the last 4 or 5 decades of R&D?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the IWC is, as you mentioned, highly linked to material science and development. So we started in 1980, more than 40 years ago, with the first full titanium watch, including titanium bracelet. A few years later, in 1986, we were the first that used zirconium oxide as a ceramic, and also the first that used colored ceramic watches. So we're kind of the inventors of colored ceramic watches. And that was basically combined in 10 years ago when I started the development with Ceratanium, that combines the advantages of titanium and ceramics. So it's very scratch resistant, but at the same time very tough, very strong material. And beside that, we had other material innovations in the ceramics pillar, I would say. We introduced, for example, a boron carbide watch. Boron carbide is the hardest ceramic or the hardest material in the world, next to diamond. So it's the hardest material you can actually produce a watch out of, boron carbide. We used silicon nitride ceramics for special edition in the past 10 years. So yeah, we have a long history, especially with ceramics and also with titanium.
And a long history with materials as well, which is why I'm curious to kind of get your take on why it's important to IWC to keep evolving materials technology.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's always, we are really an engineering brand, and for us, the main purpose to drive material science is always to give the customer a benefit. So that's the I would say the driving force. We want to give a benefit to the customer, and there are several examples. I would say Ceratanium, a very, very close one that I already mentioned. It combines the benefits of titanium that cannot break if you drop your watch, and the scratch resistance of ceramic. So we combine those two properties to a unique material, and that gives a clear customer benefit. Or, for example, a thing that is not really well known in the watch industry, we are the only ones that use ceramic components in series products also in the movement. For example, we use the automatic winding wheel and the clicks for the peloton winding system of our 52 and 82 movements. They are made from ceramics, and that offers a clear benefit because you basically have no wear in the peloton winding system.
Yeah, that sounds really. I can obviously see the benefits of ceramic components in a caliber. But I think something that a lot of people will immediately notice this year is you've got a lot of color in the ceramic. What are some of the difficulties of achieving quite specific colors at a sort of commercial level?
Yeah, let me maybe start with another aspect when we talk about colors. And as you mentioned, we use ceramic colors, and ceramic is one of the really only materials that allows for different colors. If you look at gold, at platinum, precious metals, they are kind of fixed in their corner. Bronze has a bronze color, steel is steel color, but ceramics allow for creating different colors, and that's already very important. And then I think that the difficulties are multi-level. It starts with defining the color. So we take inspiration from nature or from aviation, and then we define a color we want to achieve. And that's difficulty number one, is to produce the raw material, which is a powder in the ceramic case, the raw material that will lead to this defined color. And that's extremely difficult. And here we partner with the best companies in the world to achieve these colors. And then when you have that, you come to the next complexity level, is to produce this color in the same quality as our standard ceramics, because the processing procedure is always a little bit different. You add a little bit different components to your standard recipe, and that needs an adaptation of the process. For example, sintering temperature, sintering duration, and that you have to master. And then I think as a third, probably complexity level, you have to achieve a consistent quality, which sounds simple, but I can give you an example. If you look at the Mojave Desert color, it's a very light color, and if you have just one dust particle in this component, it will be rejected. So it's a little bit different for black. Black can, I would say, accept a little bit more or tolerate a little bit more in this regard, but as soon as you start with new colors, with light colors, quality of the process is extremely difficult and extremely important to achieve as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I kind of want to peek into that process a little bit more. So, that you mentioned black being a little bit easier as far as tolerances go. But is that something that you sort of master? You get the Mojave right and you don't get anything in there? Or is it a case where you do have, I guess, like loss, like stock loss or wastage when you are making these cases, and that's something that sort of has to be factored into, the R&D and the overall sort of cost price at the end of it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we always try to avoid loss, but I mean, honestly, when we started with the Mojave 4 or 5 years ago with the development of this color, we produced a first batch. I mean, these colors are always produced in batches, and the first batch really, when it was produced to watch cases, they had tiny dust or dirt particles in there, and I would say 4 out of 5 watch cases we produced were not acceptable, and,
wow.
and that was a huge learning for us as well. And the first batch of this powder had to be rejected. So it was a learning for us, and also important to really focus on this quality level. And of course we discuss with our suppliers, with our partners to always find the best solution, because obviously no one wants to have a high scrap rate. And today, after this key learning in developing new colors, we are on a very good track, and we know where to fine tune this process.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, for people that aren't in the space, you kind of sit back, wouldn't it be cool if it was released in pink or white? But obviously a lot goes into it.
Yes.
But what I am curious to know, so you sort of mentioned this, that innovation is really important to IWC and to your role and to yourself. Does design of a watch drive the materials that you use, or do you find a material and then kind of does that drive or dictate the overall design of a watch, if that makes sense? Or is it kind of both?
I think it's really kind of both. It can be, I mean, in the ceramic world, it's probably the second, or often the second, that we have an idea of a color we want to achieve, as for our new pieces, the Woodland, the Lake Tahoe. So we had the idea was more coming from the design. For other materials, it can be different. I mean, if we talk about boron carbide, for example, that I mentioned earlier, there you have no ability to change the color. So I would say it's both. For the ceramics, for the colored ceramics, it's probably rather the design approach than the engineering approach. But for other materials, also as an example, Ceratanium, there you are kind of limited in the color. So you first develop the material and then you design the watch. But it really can be both.
That's really fascinating. Something I'm always curious about is where you sort of find inspiration and, the materials and, innovation side of things. I understand you've got a background in the medical sector, and obviously the watch industry sort of leans from aviation and the automotive worlds. Is there a material or a technique they're using somewhere else in another industry that we might be starting to see in watches in a few years' time?
Yeah, it's not. If it would be that easy, it would be nice. I mean, you have to imagine you have a house with several entries and several doors, and you need to open all these doors. And the ideas come from different channels. I mean, some are my own ideas, and maybe I can draw analogies to my earlier jobs, as you mentioned, in the medical device industry. This is, by the way, the case for the Ceratanium. That idea I brought over from the medical device industry. But we have, many ideas come also from external sources, like our suppliers that are very innovative, that have new solutions, can come from universities, come from industrial partners, or private persons. I mean, yourself, if you have an idea, look, I would like to have this new material. I found this on Instagram whatsoever. I mean, I'm kind of a innovation manager that takes all the ideas and also manage them. And I think it's the most important thing if you want to develop new materials or new technologies in general, that you are open for all these sources. And that's, I think, what you learn a little bit when you do a PhD. You scan through all kind of different papers and scientific publications and try to be open to that. And that's, I think, the key here to really allow for all those different sources.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And one thing I kind of come back to, sort of, you've talked about, the decades that IWC sort of spent on innovative materials. And one example that I like kind of reading about was how, just the existence of Ceratanium itself. And, for a long time we saw, and we still do see, just watches that are sort of black coated. But I know that Ceratanium is different. And I don't entirely understand why, but I feel like you can explain it to me in sort of layman's terms. I know that it's much more durable, and there's some sort of infusion that goes on between materials. But I feel like you're the man to ask about this.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think the easiest way to start is to look at the two materials that are our basic history, ceramics and titanium. Ceramics is a material that is very, very scratch resistant, has a very high hardness. And on the other hand, it has a risk of fracture. So if you drop your watch, for example, on a very hard floor, there is a risk of fracture. I don't say it will fracture, but there is a risk. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you have titanium that will never fracture, because metals are very tough materials. But on the other hand, it's kind of soft, so it can scratch when you hit it against a doorpost. It can scratch when you hit it against something, and we wanted to combine these properties in a new material, the good properties of these two materials, and that is basically the development of Ceratanium. So what you do, you start with the metal, with the standard metal bar. It's a titanium alloy, a special titanium alloy, by the way, that is made only for us, so you cannot buy it on the open market. It's our recipe. And then you do more or less a classical machining. You put it on turning machines, milling machines. Mm-hmm. You machine your component out of it. It's still a metal part. Then you do the surface treatment. In our case, for the current Ceratanium parts, is sandblasting. It is still a metal component, and then the crucial step is you put it in a kiln, you heat it up to a certain temperature for a certain time, and then during this oven process it forms a hard crust. I always compare it to baking a bread. So you make your dough, you put it in the oven, and then you have a bread with a nice hard crust. It's very similar, Ceratanium, and you end up with a material that cannot break. So if you drop your watch, it will never break, but it is extremely scratch resistant.
Amazing. Well, it's very, very cool to kind of get that insight.
Is okay for a layman?
Yeah. No, it's one of those things you kind of read about it and I don't really understand, but that makes a lot of sense. All right, so this year we've seen sort of the Lake Tahoe and the Woodland models come out of IWC. I'm really curious to hear what makes these two models special from a materials perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's Woodland is the first timepiece ever we produce in green ceramics. So we really have no history in green ceramics. That makes it already special. Lake Tahoe is not the first one. We had white ceramics in 1986 already in the Da Vinci line. Very few pieces, but they are new in terms of having this inspiration around, or color inspiration around Top Gun, the inspiration from the snowy mountains surrounding Lake Tahoe, and the woodland from the forests that are linked to this region. And I think what both watches have in common is the in-house movement, our new in-house movement. So we actually, for all our novelties we present this year, we only use in-house movements, and that's a step we also want to go. We want to increase also the amount of in-house movements.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's a really kind of good objective to have. Last question that I have for you before Felix kind of jumps in. What's the process like when you are pitching for a new material? Because you do have this sort of medtech background, and you are an innovative guy. What's it like? Do you kind of find something, research it? Do you then have to kind of pitch it up to to Chris, for example? Do you start doing a bit of testing? Like, is there a new material that you're kind of working on that you want to kind of let us know about before everyone else?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like that. Of course, when you see a new material that you think, okay, that could be one that we could use for this or that component, there is a whole battery of tests you have to do, depending on where you want to use it. If it's a case material, it's obvious you have to do scratch resistance test. You have to do some allergy tests. Of course, I would say, that the biocompatibility is not that important as for an implant, where I worked before in the medical device industry. There, the regulations are filling several books. For us, it's kind of skin allergy that you have to test. And then many other tests, corrosion tests, and a whole battery of homologation tests, and that's for the material only. And then, of course, what is always important, if you have a new material, can you shape it to the desired component? That might sound easy, but it's really more difficult than you would think, because many materials that you first think, okay, they are perfect for a watch, they are not producible to our dimensional tolerances, for example. So you have to be able to machine them somehow, or to form them somehow. I can give you an example. Everyone talks today about additive manufacturing, 3D printing. We tried many things, but at the end, you cannot get the precision we need. Although you can print titanium, steel, gold, even ceramics, you can do with 3D printing, but you cannot get our tolerances. So that's a thing always to consider as well.
Fascinating. A little while ago, you were talking about sort of where you get inspiration for materials, and you mentioned that if someone sees something or approaches you and says, "Hey, I've always wanted a watch in this," or "Is this possible?" Has that happened? And have we ever seen the product of that sort of, I don't know, like crowdsourced materials innovation?
Let me think if there is one on the market. Yeah, I think probably the boron carbide is an example. I mean, it was a very limited series watch, of course, but that was proposed by one of our partners. this material, and it was honestly speaking, it was a hassle to produce, but finally we made it. And maybe I have also to talk a little bit less about materials, but other innovation projects. I'm heading the whole innovation department, so we also have many function projects. Let's say new moon phases, new calendar functions, and there we have really many ideas coming from private persons that come to me, and oftentimes they don't make it in a project because they are too crazy, or they need 800 components to produce the movement out of it. But sometimes there are good ideas that can make it. Let's see what comes in the next years, and I might have some news for you.
Oh, very exciting. Can't wait to see. All right. Well, I think we are just about out of time, but we asked Christian this before we spoke to you. What's your pick of the new releases?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm really, as the father of Ceratanium, I very much like the new chronograph with the Ceratanium bracelet. I produced, by the way, as a short side story, I produced as a prototype the first Ceratanium bracelet ever about 5 years ago. It's still sitting in my drawer. And it doesn't fit to this chronograph, unfortunately, but wearing it is such a pleasure. I love metal bracelets or hard bracelets, and that would be my top choice.
Amazing. Well, Lorenz, thank you so much for joining Felix and I. Congrats on the amazing releases from IWC this year. We look forward to sort of visiting you later in the year and seeing these watches in person very soon.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, IWC, for Mr. Brunner and his time. That was such an interesting chat that you don't really get to have directly with brands. Felix, don't you agree?
Yeah, and I think it's a really, really important part of understanding, so much of what, we're as guilty of it as anyone else. Oh, we like the dial, we like the colors, we like the, you got to think about the watches on a sort of different level, because they are...
Different way of thinking about them at all, yeah.
Yeah, they're incredibly tricky objects to make and engineer, and they're built to last. So how does that happen? Thanks to people like Lorenz. Andy, we've got to go.
Make sure you check out IWC watches as well. You can see all the materials that we've talked about. If you want to check us out, otthepodcast@gmail.com.
That's how to email us. You don't really check us out.
Check out our email account at ot.podcast on Instagram, Felix.
Yeah. And of course, we would very much appreciate any reviews. So if you're at IWC listening to this and you like our representation of your products and, how we hype up Lorenz, 5 stars. 5 stars from Schaffhausen. That would be appreciated.
And DM Felix directly if you want to buy him a Mojave Big Pilot. I'm sure he'll be very grateful.
Even a Mojave Little Pilot.
Little Pilot, yeah. All right, we'll see you guys next week.